I just finished Eastbound and Down for the third time, and I love this show very much. I think it's funny that Kenny Powers is such a piece of shit, addict, like boozing, narcissist in a lot of ways, and yet you still like him. You just really you like Dan. I like Danny Bride as that type of character, and that's where his show's always just his type of comedy storytelling is so good because of how much he is good at playing that piece of shit type of character. Yeah, I don't know how I almost look at him as like the Tony Soprano of comedy shows, where he's just actually like a, maybe not as evil and sociopathic as Tony Soprano, but very selfish, very much like a piece of shit to like the people that care about him, and all those all the people that are trying to do right by him for some reason. And what I mean is it's interesting that you like the character despite all that, as well as you just want to see where the story goes. And the story is so good in this show. Each season has a very good, like a very clear arc for what the main story of it is, and at the same time it's always Kenny just trying to get back to his place of being a celebrity and having fame and money and all that stuff. While the show doesn't have so much, the show is so over the top with how funny it is that even the serious moments aren't like, it's hard to, like, you don't take them that seriously. There's very few moments that are actually emotional in this show. However, when those emotional parts hit, it comes down like a hammer because you're not used to it at all. Anytime there is a moment where things are, especially towards the end of the series, towards the end of the series, things get very sad in a lot of ways. But then the show, like even in those moments of sadness, the show throws like a really funny moment in there. And even though it lacks a lot of like serious moments, you take the story seriously. Each season has, just a lot of stakes. This is a perfect example of high stakes and don't waste any time. The story is just told so quickly. I just started it casually and just kind of was like watching it while eating dinner or whatever, just kind of rewatching it, and I burned through it in like a couple weeks or something. It's so easy to get through because they just don't waste any time at all. While I wish there was a little more of this show. I mean, 29 episodes for a half-hour run of a show of 4 seasons seems so little, but I would rather they, Jody Hill and Danny McBride, I would rather they not, I like that it feels like they told the story that they want to tell and make all the jokes they want to make and nothing more. They don't really there's literally zero time wasted in this show. And every single episode feels like something major happens. It's like a major chapter in the characters' lives and something very impactful happens. So what's funny is it's got this mix of really, mean-spirited humor that's actually done well because they make the characters, there are characters that make Kenny Powers look like a good guy because of how evil they are, and that mean-spirited comedy is funneled very well through those characters. Like the writers really knew how to handle that. But it's so funny and mean in a lot of ways, and then out of nowhere, the story has such like high stakes and gets so you get so invested in it is all I'm trying to say with this. Like you're watching it for the funny, and then all of a sudden you really give a shit about the story and you really want to see where it goes next. And that's so hard. Like not only it's not only hard to do that, but it's so impressive to see someone do that in a continuous, a continuous episodic story like that, and it doesn't get stale. Or like, I guess you could say the show definitely repeats itself as far as every season is like Kenny starting from the bottom and working his way up to the top, and then for whatever reason, this or that, he fucks up and then kind of starts over. That's the cycle of how each season works. And while most of the time that might feel a little repetitive or feel like it's cyclical, it really isn't. It's there's always a unique, like all of the guest actors in this show make every season extremely memorable. the first few seasons with Will Ferrell and Craig Robinson, with the Ashley Schaefer BMW shit, is so funny. Then you got Jason Sudeikis as Shane in season 2 or 3, if I remember correctly. Maybe season 3, yeah. I don't know, but all those guest actors, specifically like Sacha Baron Cohen, and just he's only in the finale. Ken Marino as Guy Young is so funny. He's so fantastic. I love Party Down. It's one of my favorite shows because Ken Marino is so fucking great in those types of in just specific comedic roles. But what I really love is how much the story comes through, and there's a lot of lovely payoff and a lot of roller coasters. Like it feels like every episode is doing this. Not gonna lie, like every episode, it's got like so many highs and lows, so many wins and losses, and I love how just succinct they told the story and how efficiently they did everything, and it's just so it's like they use that quick, you know how comedy is supposed to be quick and loud. They use that quick pace of comedy just in the story because it feels like the scenes are so cinematically done and so similar, like the way a movie feels. Like it literally is like every episode's almost just this short film kind of. Like the way that it's shot and just the way like the production of Eastbound and Down is so good for a show that really, you know, you don't expect it to have that. I guess I should say you don't expect that kind of show to be so you know, such high, like it's got a lot of sophisticated production in it despite being a very crude, you know, despite the crude nature of the show. But I really love these guys so much, and I think that this is actually their peak. I had made a video previously or a little while back when I finished The Righteous Gemstones. Was that like a few years ago now? When The Righteous Gemstones finished, I was like, oh yeah, that's like Danny McBride's best show, arguably. And I would say that it is from like a general, like if someone's never watched Danny McBride's types of shows, they kind of want to watch something random. Like that's not random, but that's the most like generally, that'll probably be the most generally well received out of all of his shows, because Eastbound and Down is a little too it would probably be a little too risque for certain people right now, but that's why, in my opinion, it is their best show. Eastbound and Down actually is Jody Hill and Danny McBride's best achievement as far as somehow making a real piece of shit character very funny and likable, and a story centered around that character, that the story being good. Every bit of it is just good and fucking hysterical. This show is so funny because of how that you know, while I don't think mean-spirited comedy is always good, it just depends on how it's done. This show does it well, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia does that very well too. But you have to know how to do mean-spirited humor. That like the biggest trick, I feel like the hardest part of that as a writer, I imagine, would be to make them just a piece of shit enough to where it's like, oh, like you almost admire a character that just does whatever they want, says whatever they want, just like a fuck you attitude, and like I can appreciate that because I'm like that too, right? But I think there's such a fine line, and there's a very gray area to making that character. Like the hardest part of that is you can't have the character do anything that is, you know, unforgivable or something that can't be something that's irredeemable or whatever in that way. That's the hardest thing, is that you can see like that they played with that with Kenny Powers' character. There's so many moments where you're like, oh my god, like why is this main character? Why am I like rooting for? He's like so bad, but then like I said, they introduce other characters that are actually like real evil, even worse, like people that make him look like, all right, he's not them at least. And I think that's where they had that to their advantage, is they had to have extremely evil antagonists to make Kenny Powers just general like narcissism, selfishness, like seem like, all right, like Kenny Powers actually gives a shit about April and his kids, and even though he treats Stevie like shit, he does care about Stevie. He does things that win you over as an audience, and they always make sure to include that. Like it's like 90% of Kenny Powers is a fucking asshole, but that 10% is why we keep watching. That little 10% of him being a decent guy. And then when you meet his parents, played by Don Johnson and Lily Tomlin, You see how they're fucking awful too. And well, his mom's a saint, but you see his dad's a real piece of shit. And Don Johnson absolutely destroys, another wonderful guest star, and amongst everyone else, that's all they're all like powerhouse guest stars. Will Ferrell specifically is so fucking good as Ashley Schaefer. Some of the funniest parts of the show are those first few seasons when he was on there. And yeah, I just really, I love how they did that so well with making Kenny Powers a piece of shit. They have to make him a selfish, like narcissistic piece of shit, because that's also what inspires a lot of the conflict of the show. It's like they really just had to use his toxicity as a way of adding drama, and like he self-sabotages himself a lot and just does a lot of things that are that you can't help but think like, why the fuck is he doing this? Like what is he thinking? But he's I guess the best part of it is that they don't shy away from showing that like he's a weak man, or that he is not, and he's always like, even when he feels bad, or when all of a sudden when he's like put on the spot or put in the hot seat, he tries to, like dial back and be like, oh, I don't know, I didn't mean that, or whatever. Like Kenny Powers will do whatever he wants and then tries to like apologize for it. But you can see his vulnerabilities, I guess is what I'm trying to say. He's such a like this rock hard like total shithead, and then out of nowhere you see a lot of poignant moment. You see these poignant moments and moments where he is actually vulnerable. And in the very last episode, there's such a great moment where he's just purely honest, and he's finally like admits to all of his faults, and he's just very like honest with. There are moments where he's honest with himself, the ones that he loves, and the audience, that it's like you see through all of his shitheadedness, is what I'm trying to say. He's such a dick, and then you see through that with those moments. And if they didn't have those moments, then you really wouldn't give a shit about him. Tony Soprano, the only reason I'm bringing them up is because this is literally like started right after Sopranos ended. It felt like such an influence on just the whole vibe of Eastbound and Down, as far as like what they did with the protagonist. But where Kenny Powers has those redeemable qualities, Tony Soprano is like there's even less of those things, which makes him even more questionable of a protagonist to root for. But when it comes to Kenny Powers, yeah, like he's just such a dumb like teenage boy in the body of a full grown man. He's like a full grown man. I assume he's like maybe in his like 30, at least in his like 30s or mid 30s, late 30s, and when the show starts, and that's just so it's so great to see. Immaturity, I guess, is really what this show is so good at too. Is just that immature. It's such a guy show. It's such like a lot of humor is so rooted in what guys think is funny, and what not that I'm saying that I think women could enjoy this show just as much, but there is so much of a bro energy to it. I mean, this show's like a mix of Entourage and I don't know, some baseball movie. I always want to say Sports Night or whatever the hell that like show was. Any sports, you get what I'm saying. It's got a lot of that guy shit in there, and maybe that's why why I will really appreciate it, is because I grew up with so much of that stuff, and I've seen so much of the crude male driven, like a lot of sexual humor kind of driven comedies growing up myself, that I'm super biased in that way, where there was so much of that in the 90s and 2000s that I just love that kind of comedy because of how unapologetic it is, and it's just so in your face, it's so abrasive, and that's what my favorite brand of comedy is just so in your face, because that's like Eastbound and Down is the kind of show I picture. Like watching it, I'm almost not inspired to do the same thing or whatever, or not even go to like, they make some gnarly fucking jokes in this show where I don't even know if I would have the guts to do that, but it's a show that will definitely influence anybody that wants to make something that's very risque, or make something that's just yeah, very like immature driven, stupid, like teenage boy humor. It's just sometimes that's very funny because of how, I don't know, how primal it is and how childish it is. Like the child, like watching full grown adults act in childish ways and do stupid shit. Like, you know, the whole joke being like, yeah, men are just stupid children at the end of the day. That's always funny. I don't know why. It just works. It's one of those things that'll always work purely because of just the formula that it is. They did that very well with Eastbound and Down, and I highly recommend it to anybody that's a fan of just Danny McBride and comedies in general. If you like comedy, you should watch Eastbound and Down because it is honestly like a top 5 comedy show for me. It's like, if I had like a Mount Rushmore of comedy shows, it would be an honorable mention, very close to, you know, Seinfeld, Chappelle's Show, South Park, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Those are like some of the highest tier like comedy shows I've ever seen in my life. And Curb Your Enthusiasm, Boondocks are in there as well. Certain when it comes to certain television series that have had the biggest impact on my kind of humor, and all those shows are not Seinfeld as much, but all those shows are very like crass and blunt and just like I said, kind of an abrasive approach to comedy, which I love so much. And yeah, Eastbound and Down is the fucking best when it comes to that, and it's worth multiple rewatches. I've watched it 3 times now, and it was good every single time. Watched it once just to watch it. Second time, I think the second and third times, I literally started them out of boredom. Was just like, yeah, let me kind of throw this on in the background, and then I'm immediately like drawn into it because of how well written and acted and produced the show is. It's just so, all of the stuff that matters with the TV show, it hits it out. No pun intended. It hits it out of the park, and it's a full home run. Because I can't think, you know, the only I can't even really think of anything to criticize when it comes to this kind of show. It's like, I guess the only thing that it's a double-edged sword with being like a very male-driven brand of humor, but I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I just mean that that's limiting from an audience, like most audiences. You can't really show this show to your kids. You can't really, like, or even younger people. Like, I don't know. I think like teenagers could watch that and appreciate Eastbound and Down, but it's definitely not a family watch. It's like you just kind of watch it by yourself so that you don't worry about being judged for which bits you laugh at because of how fucked up a lot of the jokes are and how inappropriate it is. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Eastbound and Down is really worth watching at least a handful of times in your lifetime if you like comedy.